Welcome to week 2 of Fast Action Friday. Lewis, unfortunately, is unable to join us tonight. So it is just myself and Rob flying the Fast Action Falcon tonight. Rob, how's it going, mate?
Very well, yeah. Had a good long week at work, getting all these articles out, and just it's nice to have a blockbuster Thursday night game to talk about again like there was last week. Did you catch any of it?
Just watched some quick highlights this morning as I was having my breakfast.
Yeah, there's some good things to talk about in here. It's gonna be good. I imagine Lewis is probably listening along while doing Daddy Daycare. So hello,
Daddy
to Lewis.
Daycare, yeah. Nice. All right, then. Let's keep this snappy and get straight down to business then. So first up, our Thursday night throwback. All right, and so this week's Thursday game saw the Chargers travel to Arrowhead. Two teams got the week 1 win, but then they faced up in the divisional match, and it was the Charger game mixed with a standard Chiefs game, in the sense that the Chargers got the lead and then let the other team back in and blew it, whereas the Chiefs let the other team get ahead and then clawed it back to win it. So quite an entertaining game, really.
Yeah, it was. And I know, like the final score had the Chiefs win, but actually, I felt Justin Herbert came away with a solid stat line, and he played rather well. So 33 completed passes on quite a few more than Mahomes as well. Yielded 334 yards, 3 touchdowns. So on the surface, looks great, but he also had an interception, a game-changing interception, and that turned into a 99-yard return score. And that was ultimately the score that separated the teams. To add insult to injury, or to injury to insult, Herbert also got an injury after the Chiefs took the lead. So quite tough viewing for Chargers fans, and I imagine for fantasy fans post-game. When it comes to Mahomes, he had a quieter night, 24 completions, 235 yards with 2 touchdowns. Some would say Asante Samuel's interception only hit the floor after the completion, but it's a close call. I think there's going to be quite a few chats about that in the near future. But you've got to go with what you dealt with. His delayed arm pass to Jerick McKinnon, that was a thing of beauty. He's done that in the past, normally to Kelsey, but yeah, this time McKinnon was the recipient. And again, Justin Watson hit him with a cracking pass. Took apart JC Jackson on the corner. Justin Watson cut inside. JC Jackson saw that hand coming out, but it was nowhere near. And yeah, a good reception.
Yeah, it was, like you say, the McKinnon pass usually to the tight end, but it's quite good to actually see now that obviously Hill's gone as well. They're actually mixing things up and it's changing their offense slightly, but still got the same trick plays, which is always good with that offense to watch. So yeah, interesting. All right, so the rest of the offensive players, I'll start with the Chargers. Obviously, Allen was out for this game. And after last week's no-show, it was nice to see Big Mike step up. He had a good 8 receptions for 113 yards and a touchdown, and he was catching some absolute monsters. So that was good to get him back into the game as well. Everett, he had a nice game too with 6 receptions for 71 yards. Then you got the two kind of unknowns still, I think, with Carter and Palmer. They're kind of newer names to the team. So Carter caught all 3 of his passes for 55 yards, and Palmer had 4 receptions for 30 yards. But he did pick up a touchdown as well, so that was good for his stats. For a second week now as well, the fullback Hovarth, is it Horvath? Something like
Horvath,
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had 1 reception for 1 yard and a touchdown.
That's all it needs, isn't it? You need a yard and a touchdown. That's all it needs.
So he's kind of sneaking some of those touches away on the goal line. So one to watch is that one. Obviously, not quite good enough to be putting in the fantasy teams, but he keeps on stealing touchdowns. So, obviously, rushing as well. Then we've got Eckler. He had 14 attempts for only 39 yards, but he did have 9 receptions for 55 yards. The other 2 running backs in Kelly and Michelle, they didn't really get used.
Tough one, that one, because Michelle, when the Chargers got down to the red zone close to the line, they brought Michelle in, and he got stuffed at the 1 yard line, and you didn't really see much again from him from the red zone. Like it was a bit more of a mix, but yeah, that was a chance for Michelle to score and didn't take it. And you never know, might see Eckler getting more carries closer to the the rushing touchdowns close to 20 and the 10 and the
in
5.
the red zone, and yeah.
Mm.
Obviously, I'm not going to touch on it too much, but the D, in which you'll talk about in a minute, it actually helped the Chargers a lot, but it had quite a few short fields, so that kind of contributed to quite a few of the minimal stats for everyone, apart from obviously Big Mike, who was balling out. Chiefs, CAH, he had 8 rush attempts for 74 yards with an extra 4 receptions for 44 yards to top up his stats. McKinnon, he's still stealing touches and had 4 rush attempts for 12 yards, but managed to steal a receiving touchdown off 2 receptions for 4 yards as well. So that was, again, there's those kind of extra backs kind of coming in and stealing some of the work and getting the touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, Pacheco's been dropping himself in there, but no sign of Ronald Jones yet. I think he could be an odd man out. You may see him get cut in a couple of weeks, unless an injury appears in this running back team.
I mean, you talked about the Chiefs rookie then. After a good showing last week, he only had 2 attempts for 6 yards, so kind of game script didn't bring him in this time round. Receivers, Juju, 3 receptions, 10 yards. MVS, 2 receptions, 13 yards. Harmon, 3 for 49. Watson had 2 receptions for 50 yards and a touchdown, so that was nice. And then Kelsey had sort of a quiet game. He had 5 for 51 yards. So the Chiefs D again had some part to kind of go along with this too. But I'll hand it back to you to talk about the D.
Yeah. Obviously, we covered about it in the quarterbacks. The big takeaway from this game, what looked like to be the big separator, was that 99-yard touchdown return from the rookie. I believe it was a rookie who got slotted in at short notice. He was the big difference. The majority of the big offensive players kept quiet, like you've already covered, which is why it was some less than conventional touchdown scores at Horvath, McKinnon, Palmer, Watson. I think the extra fantasy points for attacking the quarterback play were quite small as well, considering like how many points both teams got last week. You know, the Chiefs against the Cardinals, the Chargers against the Raiders, and sacks were minimal this week. Only the 1 interception, the big one. So I think that was partly down to the line doing fairly well, but also evasion from both quarterbacks until Herbert got that massive hit. And it is a shame that the game scoreline came down to that one big mistake, because overall it was quite an entertaining game on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, it was good. Big plays then. So I was already talked about Williams. I loved his one-handed catch for that touchdown in the corner. Defense was all over him, but he just pulled it in and created a nice highlight reel for himself. He had a few big plays in the game as well. One kind of came over the top down the middle as well, which was pretty good to see, especially after his no-show in week 1. Yeah.
Mine, well, I've got have a few, but Derwin James power slamming Kelsey in the red zone. That was a brutal hit. It was like he was almost up over the head, and then down he came. That was like, and that's like an American football player, and dropping that on him as well. Herbert pulling up and then throwing a ball all the way so close to the first down marker. I thought that was quite unusual, but I felt like he did it because he didn't want to get hit again, so it kind of made sense. But for me, the 99 touchdown return, that's got to be the play of the day. It separated both teams. It was a big turning point.
Yeah, talking about that, Herbert, he obviously he was wincing and kind of just threw it away. But literally the next play straight after him, he put it on a dime and put it straight down the middle and got the first down, and he still kind of pushed through. So it was, those rib injuries, I think they're still waiting on test results to see what's going on to see the extent of the damage and what's kind of going on. But yeah, there we go. All right, next up, we are talking about injuries on the injury report. All right, so Keenan Allen, we just said, did not play through his hamstring injury. Justin Herbert getting those x-rays afterwards. They're kind of coming back negative, but that sounds promising, but he's getting more tests to kind of see why it was happening, what was going on, and how much of a recovery he's going to need to kind of. I'm guessing he'll be available for the next game, and they'll just sort him out and
we'll see.
Tape him up. But another aspect is to highlight is the several Chargers linemen also kind of left the game through injury as well, so could mean less protection for him, which is obviously not good, and then lower the level of the run blocking. Anyway, on to running backs. Who are we covering this week?
So we talked about him last week. we'll talk about it again this week because he actually got injured in this game. That's Elijah Mitchell with his knee injury, likely out for 2 months. We did mention Jeff Wilson last week as the one who could get more touches in a positive game script, but it looks like he could be the favourite to actually lead that backfield now. Interestingly enough, Marlon Mack has been signed to the practice squad, and he's got veteran experience, so maybe he could be the one who comes up to the proper squad and takes over from some of these lesser-known rookies with less experience. But Kyle Shanahan just uses who he wants to use, doesn't he? So it's all up in the air. Najee Harris seemed to have tweaked his foot injury earlier on in the week in the game, and it looked like it could have been Jalen Warren to take control as he took the vast majority of snaps after Harris left. But the injuries developed, and it seems to be that the midweek worries have passed, which is great. And Harris looks to be back in the clear for this week's match against New England. We'll just have to see what the final report says when it comes to on the game. And then the final running back to look at, Alvin Kamara. People were quite surprised that he didn't get as involved in the game last week against the Falcons. It turns out he was dealing with a rib injury.
There you go.
So, yeah, it came out after the game. So they were quite surprised. I probably expect his usage to go up against the Bucs, particularly after it looked like Ingram struggled quite a bit with dealing with some of the defenders. So I think Kamara could be there with the rushes and with the pass catching element as well.
Yeah. All right, so Dak Prescott, obviously we've heard all about him this week. He looked to be heading for the IR with his thumb injury, and then he wasn't. And then there were murmurs that he could actually only need 7 to 10 days. But then, obviously, he's such a good healer, as they all say. But who the chuff knows? No. Yep. Anyway, Cooper Rush is in, which could change the fortunes of the other Dallas players. So keep an eye on that. Mm-hmm. Dak will definitely be out this week. So at least we know that Cooper Rush is in for a role against the Bengals. Mac Jones, he came back to training after his back injury, only to be floored by a non-COVID related illness. He didn't train as of Thursday, which means we could see a backup taking place against the Steelers. Just watch his practice status today, see what's going on with that. If the switch does happen, it's more likely going to be Brian Hoyer over the rookie. Going back to the running backs, I don't know if you saw this, but Brian Robinson was back doing drills yesterday after being shot. So getting him back to football is awesome after such a short time. So I hope he gets himself back. And I know I'm jumping on your toes here with your wide receivers, but Pittman didn't practice on Thursday, so watch out for his playing status as well.
Absolutely. T. Higgins is the first one that I've got of the wide receivers with his concussion. He hasn't yet completed the protocol. And now he's started to miss training for personal reasons as well. So there's 2 reasons that he could be missing the game this weekend. You could expect Tyler Boyd to get a boost here. You know, he has done it before. He could do it again. But something of note to recognise is that Hayden Hurst,
my boy,
the tight end, your boy, he got a healthy target share once Higgins had left the field. So that's something to bear in mind when you're making your lineup selections this week. And then Wan'Dale Robinson for the New York Giants. This is going to be big news for Lewis when he talks about his flex of the week later on. Lewis has sent a video in, so he gets to talk about his flex of the week. He's missed 2 practices with an injury, has Wan'Dale Robinson, so chances are very slim of him playing. Richie James shined in his absence, and perhaps we'll see Daniel Bellinger make an impact this week. That is, of course, if Saquon doesn't hoover everything up against the Panthers.
It was nice seeing Barkley back, wasn't it?
Oh, so good. Yeah, I've championed him in this offseason. I think I had him as my RB in the top 5 RBs. So he's one of my favourites for this season. Nice. So much so I chose him over Eckler in my home draft. So we'll have to see how that pans out.
Yeah.
So third segment, it is weak points. And in the weak points, we normally go off, the average scores conceded against positions. We've only had 1 week of action, so not a lot to go off. Could be some off days for some teams, but we shall look at week 1 stats and see if any teams are plumbing new lows or if it's just business as usual compared to what we talked about last week. This time it's based off the Fantasy Pros points against rather than the NFL Fantasy website. So maybe some differences in the scoring. However, let's talk about QBs.
All right, so weakest against quarterbacks was Cardinals, led the week this week with 34.9 points conceded. They face the Raiders. So potentially strong week for Derek Carr is incoming. He found a nice connection with Devontae Adams again and Waller as well. So positives for the Las Vegas Raiders, which is good. The Rams were second with 33.5 after a Thursday night pasting by the Bills. So they then play the Falcons this week. So, and the Jags are also third with 29.7 points. They come up against the Colts. So look for Matt Ryan to put out a strong performance. We like Matt Ryan.
Yeah, we do indeed. If Pittman's not in, though, we may see him moving around a bit more. Nyheim Hines is still out there as well. You know, he could be a good pass catching option. Speaking of Nyheim Hines, running backs, the weakest against running backs last week were the Eagles. 40.5 points against the Lions. This week they play the Vikings. So it could be a big week for Dalvin Cook and Alan Batterson if he gets involved. It could be a big game on the cards there. And that's a nice link into the Arizona Cardinals, who are second on this list. And like we said before, they play the Raiders. So it looks like many positions are going to feast against the Raiders here. It could have just been an off week against the Chiefs, but with Jacobs, Zamir White, Brandon Bolden in a surprising pass-catching role rather than Amir Abdullah, there's quite a few options there to choose from. And then sadly, the third team is the Panthers, who got run over by the Browns last week. And yeah, could this be the continuation of Saquon's season? I mean, hopefully not, but for my fantasy teams, I don't think I would mind.
Yes, a double-edged sword there for you. You want Barkley to be going off, but you don't want him going off against a team. So
yeah.
All right, weakest against the wide receivers. The Rams got torn apart by Buffalo for 52.2 points. They're playing the Falcons this week, who incidentally are third on the list with 43.6. So if Allen Robinson can't do it against the Falcons, then you've all sunk the 9th round pick in redrafts. So that's not good, is it? So anyway, sandwiched in between them are the Jags with 44.5 points. They're up against the Colts. So load up your Pittman if he's healthy. Definitely Campbell. I love Campbell as well, but he just needs to stay healthy and go for it. Anyway, it's one to watch this weekend for those. And I think looking back at the Rams, who obviously played against the Bills, who were pretty strong, I'm hoping that they're just going to come out and go, actually, yeah, no, we're still a team to be considered.
I think it's a bit of a false economy, isn't it? After week one.
Week one, yeah.
It's just a week one outlier, but we'll see what happens. Weakest against tight ends. Oh, it's the Cardinals again. Oh, 30.2 points.
I wonder how many points they got given against them.
So yeah, the Vegas Raiders, Darren Waller looked like he got a good connection again after being virtually absent during the offseason and the preseason. So expect that to continue. The Broncos conceded 26.2 points, so they're up against Houston. And we also what OJ Howard did after joining the Texans late on in the preseason. So could that continue? I personally think it could do. Dominate that depth chart position, pick up those tasty red zone targets. And then Falcons for the Falcons again in third position, 20.1 points. So Tyler Higbee, lock him in, load him in.
Nice. Right then, our final segment of the week is Flex of the Week. Nice. So I had two this week. I'm obviously going to don't talk about one. So I'm just going to go with. So Jamal Williams, 2 touchdowns for him last week. Granted, he only had 11 rushing attempts for only 28 yards. However, the Lions like to keep bringing him into the game, and Swift has been injured this week and missing practice, so it could end up getting potentially more workload this week. And we'll see how Swift goes, but it's just one to watch. I like Williams. I've got him in quite a few of my fantasy teams as my backup running back on the bench. So
yeah, me too. And I think this is closer than a lot of primary and secondary backs. A lot closer to a committee than a lot of people think. Just because, like you say, they will use him in various situations, and those touchdowns give a lovely little boost to any fantasy score. My pick was fairly reliable at the Raiders, so it's not Hunter Renfrow this week. It's someone who was there last year. It's Zay Jones, who has moved to the Jags. He is second, in my opinion, in that wide receiver group behind Christian Kirk, and Kirk will draw that primary coverage. I believe he's third receiving option overall behind Kirk and Etienne, because I think Etienne is going to see just as much, if not more, of the ball in the air this week. First week, Zay Jones saw a really decent workload, 6 completions on 9 targets for 65 yards in a game that the Jags were behind in a lot. And it's likely that the same will happen again against the Colts this week. The Jags do struggle, like they make mistakes. We saw a few mistakes in the first week. The great news is that the Colts also conceded 4 worst fantasy points against the Texans, and that surprised a lot of people. So if the Texans can surprise them against the Colts, then I think the Jags could do the same as well. This time we've got Lewis delivering his message via video. So he sent in earlier today. He didn't want to miss out on the fun. So here is Lewis's pick.
What is going on, Rush Nation? I am gutted not to be joining Rob and Pittsy this week on Fast Action Friday, but I couldn't miss out on all the fun, and here is my flex of the week. Sterling Shepard for the New York Giants against the Carolina Panthers. He had a decent showing last week with just over 16 points, enough to finish as a wide receiver too. After the injury he picked up last season, that is very solid. He's got the potential to lock down that wide receiver 1 role in New York as well. Saquon Barkley led the team in receptions with 7 last week, but we seen what Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt done to Carolina in week 1. They ran all over them, so I wouldn't be surprised to see Barkley used more in the rushing game than in the receiving. Plus for me, the culture that Brian DeBoer is building in New York, that game's got a potential to be a shootout. Naturally, the wide receivers are going to eat more. Plus that beautiful touchdown he scored last week, Sterling Shepard. You probably had to grab him off the waiver wire. Do not let them $5 go to waste on your bench. Get him in the flex spot.
Love that.
Thanks
for that, Lewis. That was good. Right then, Rob. That is it. Another Fast Action Friday in the books.
Yeah.
It's always fast. That's what we want it to be. So thanks for tuning in. Hopefully, Lewis will get you back next week and joining in all the fun properly. But until that next week, keep rushing.